Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you something you have never heard before about the disappearance of Lynette Hooker, and trust me, you are not ready for this. Lynette vanished into the dark waters of the Bahamas back in April, and her husband Brian said she simply fell off their dinghy. But what Lynette's own daughter just revealed changes everything. 2 years before her mother disappeared, Brian Hooker grabbed Lynette by the neck, choked her, and told her he would throw her overboard where nobody would ever find her. That is not speculation. That is what Lynette told her daughter Karli with her own mouth. And now Karli is speaking out about the threat that looks less like a fight and more like a promise. Before we start, please like this video and subscribe to The Crime Conclusive, because what you are about to hear will make you question everything Brian Hooker has said. Here's the truth. The nightmare begins on a sailboat called Soulmate. For Lynette Hooker, that boat was supposed to be freedom. She was 59 years old, living the dream she had chased for years, sailing the Caribbean, waking up to turquoise water, leaving behind the cold Michigan winters. She sewed the blue canvas windows on that boat with her own hands. She did yoga on the deck every morning. Her daughter Karli says her mother was the most adventurous person she ever knew. But Soulmate was also a cage, because living on that boat with Lynette was her husband of more than 20 years, Brian Hooker. And according to Karli, the man who smiled at marina neighbors and charmed everyone he met had a completely different face behind closed doors. On April 4th, around 7:30 in the evening, Brian says he and Lynette left their sailboat anchored near Hopetown in the Bahamas. They took a small dinghy toward shore. The weather, he claims, turned violent. Rough waves, high winds. And somehow, Lynette bounced off the dinghy and disappeared into the black water. Brian says he searched for her. He says he paddled that dinghy alone for hours. And then, at 4 in the morning, more than 8 hours later, he landed in Marsh Harbour. No Lynette, no body, no trace of the woman who had spent her entire retirement chasing the sun. The first thing you need to understand is that an 8-hour paddle makes no sense to anyone who knows these waters. Locals in the Bahamas told investigators that the area near Elbow Cay is shallow. In some places, a grown woman could stand up and touch the bottom. The water was not some raging ocean storm. Pictures taken that same day show something closer to choppy lake conditions, not a death sentence. So, how does a woman fall off a small dinghy in shallow water and simply vanish without a single scream heard by any other boat nearby? Here is where Brian's story starts to crack. He posted on Facebook after Lynette vanished, writing that his only focus was searching for her. But a friend of Brian's named Blaine Stevenson told Fox News Digital something completely different. He said Brian searched for about 3 or 4 hours, not all night. And then, instead of continuing to look for his missing wife, Brian went back to the sailboat Soulmate and sat there for nearly 24 hours, an entire day. He did not borrow another boat. He did not ask locals for help. He did not call the Coast Guard himself. He sat on the boat while his wife was somewhere in the dark water. 24 hours of silence while the woman he married was gone. But that is not the part that will haunt you. The part that should make every person watching this sick to their stomach comes from Lynette's own daughter, Karli. Because what Karli knows, what she's been holding since before her mother ever touched that dinghy, is a threat that Brian Hooker made 2 full years before Lynette disappeared. Karli says the threat came out during a fight in 2024 when Brian Hooker and Lynette were still living on the boat together. They had broken up temporarily, and Karli flew down to Florida to see her mother. That is when Lynette told her daughter something that should have been a warning to everyone. Pues, di en your dester an. Brian had choked her, his hands around her neck. And while he had her, he looked her in the eyes and said he would throw her overboard. He said nobody would ever find her if he did. Those words were not shouted in some random argument. They were a specific promise about a specific death in the water. And 2 years later, Lynette Hooker vanished from a dinghy in the Bahamas with no body, no witnesses, and a husband who says she just fell off. The Bahamas police heard that threat. They knew about it within days of Lynette disappearing. And what did they do? They locked Brian Hooker in a cell for 5 days. 5 days of interrogation. 5 days of watching him sit in a Bahamian jail while they tried to break him, but they let him go. They said they did not have enough evidence. So Brian walked out free, got on a plane, and flew back to Michigan. He told the world he would never stop searching for Lynette. Then he left the Bahamas within hours. Now let me show you what changed everything. The United States Coast Guard did not let this go. They opened their own criminal investigation, and that word criminal is doing heavy lifting here because the Coast Guard does not use it lightly. They seized the sailboat Soulmate about 40 nautical miles off the coast of Melbourne, Florida. This was not a simple tow. They executed a complex surveillance and interdiction operation with helicopters, airplanes, and federal agents. They boarded that boat like it was a moving crime scene, and then they wrapped crime scene tape around it while it sat at the Coast Guard station in Fort Pierce. Federal agents have been crawling over every inch of that boat. They are looking for blood. They are looking for signs of cleanup. They are looking for anything that proves Lynette Hooker never fell off that dinghy because she was already dead when that dinghy left the sailboat. And here is what you need to understand about the timing. Brian was not on that boat when the Coast Guard seized it. He had hired 2 men to bring Soulmate from the Bahamas to Florida. And those 2 men turned off the boat's GPS during the trip. Ask yourself why anyone would disable a GPS on a vessel being brought back for a criminal investigation. The answer is not complicated. They did not want anyone knowing exactly where that boat had been. That threat from 2024 was not a one-time thing. Karli told me that her stepfather has always had 2 sides: the charming, outgoing man who could talk to anyone at the marina, and the man who got irritated and turned into something else entirely. Something she calls a dick, basically. But here is what should terrify every person watching this. Karli says she has seen him capable of doing something really bad multiple times. She has both seen it and heard about it. That is not a daughter with a grudge. That is a daughter who watched a man control her mother for more than 20 years, from the time Karli was just 4 years old. And now that same man is walking free. The Coast Guard is not letting this go. They are treating Soulmate like what it is, a floating crime scene. Federal agents in gloves and sidearms spent hours photographing every inch of that boat. They searched the deck, the cockpit, the cabin. They hauled away 2 large bags of marked evidence. And then they wrapped the entire vessel in yellow crime scene tape, the kind you see around murder houses, not sailboats. But here's where the story gets even darker. The Coast Guard is not just looking at Brian Hooker. They are now searching for another sailboat, one that was moored right next to Soulmate on the night Lynette disappeared. The owners or occupants of that mystery vessel may have seen something. They may have heard something. And the Coast Guard is desperate to find them before their memory fades. Meanwhile, Karli has not heard a single word from investigators about what they have found. She told me she learned about the boat being seized from the news, not from any official. She is being kept in the dark while her mother's body is somewhere in the Atlantic, assuming she is even in the water at all. And Brian Hooker? He hired a high-powered attorney in Michigan, Crystal Marie Hauser, who is now asking the public to give him the benefit of the doubt. The benefit of the doubt for a man whose wife told their daughter he would throw her overboard where nobody would ever find her. The benefit of the doubt for a man who sat on his boat for 24 hours while his wife was missing. The benefit of the doubt for a man who said he would never leave the Bahamas and then left within hours. So where does this case stand right now in the middle of 2026? Lynette Hooker has been missing for more than 6 weeks. Her body has never been found. And Brian Hooker is walking free in the United States, represented by a high-powered Michigan attorney named Crystal Marie Hauser, who is asking the public to give her client the benefit of the doubt. The benefit of the doubt for a man whose wife told their daughter he would throw her overboard where nobody would ever find her. For a man who sat on his boat for 24 hours while his wife was missing. For a man who said he would never leave the Bahamas and then left within hours. That is what his attorney is asking for. But here is what you need to understand about the Coast Guard investigation. They are not giving Brian Hooker the benefit of the doubt. They seized Soulmate in what they are calling a complex surveillance and interdiction operation. That means they were watching that boat. They were tracking it. And when they finally boarded it about 40 nautical miles off the coast of Melbourne, Florida, they did it with helicopters, airplanes, and federal agents. This was not a casual tow. This was a military-grade operation. And now that boat is wrapped in yellow crime scene tape at the Coast Guard station in Fort Pierce, Florida, where agents in gloves and sidearms have spent hours photographing every inch of the deck, the cockpit, the cabin. They have hauled away bags marked evidence. They are looking for blood. They are looking for signs of a struggle. They are looking for anything that proves Lynette Hooker never fell off that dinghy because she was already gone before that dinghy ever left Soulmate. The mystery does not end there. The Coast Guard is now searching for the owners of another sailboat, one that was moored right next to Soulmate in Aunt Pat's Bay on the night Lynette disappeared. Jersey and Chamber. Those occupants may have seen something. They may have heard something. And the Coast Guard is desperate to find them before their memory fades. Anyone with information is being urged to contact CGIS through their Tips app. That is how serious this investigation has become. Maritime attorney Michael Winkleman told Newsweek that even if Brian Hooker stays in the United States, he can still be arrested and charged here. The boat itself could hold the evidence needed: blood, electronic data, positioning records that contradict Brian's version of events. And the 2 men who were hired to bring Soulmate from the Bahamas to Florida, they turned off the boat's GPS during the trip. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself what they did not want anyone to see. Lynette's daughter Karli has not heard from investigators in weeks. She learned about the boat being seized from the news, not from any official. She spent her first Mother's Day without her mother, posting a heart-wrenching message on social media about the woman who taught her to be adventurous, to sew with her own hands, to chase the sun. Lynette's mother, Darlene Hamlet, told the Daily Mail that the family has no idea where Brian Hooker is. He has gone silent. He is not searching. He is not speaking. He is hiding behind his attorney while the Coast Guard picks apart his boat piece by piece. So what happens next? The CGIS investigation remains active and criminal. That word criminal is the most important word in this entire case because it tells you everything. The Coast Guard does not believe this was an accident. Lynette's daughter does not believe this was an accident. The locals in the Bahamas never believed this was an accident. And now federal agents are combing through a seized sailboat looking for the truth. Brian Hooker has not been charged. But the walls are closing in. And somewhere out there in the dark water off Elbow Cay, or maybe not in the water at all, Lynette Hooker is waiting to be found. Her daughter is waiting for justice. And the world is waiting to see if the man who made a promise to throw his wife overboard will finally have to answer for keeping that promise.